is Monday, the 24th of May, 2021, and time for Freshly Pressed 981. This morning, I have joining me to analyze the stories, Cheta Wednesday. Morning, Cheta.
Good morning. How was your weekend?
Very well, thanks. Cheta, why is your voice sounding a bit low? Don't let them think that we didn't give you or treat you well this morning. Good morning, Cheta.
Okay, let me report Ayo. I don't have your headset.
Okay, then. Thank you. I shouldn't have
I'm
asked.
being treated very poorly.
I shouldn't have asked that. It's my fault. I take responsibility. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. C. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm very good. Good morning, Nayo. Good morning, Chetsa. Good morning, Lagos. And to a specific listener, good morning, Nuzoma. We love you from Smooth. We admire you, and we can't wait to see you in the studio.
All right. Who is Uzoma?
His wife.
I'm looking at no. That's not his wife. I know his wife. I'm looking as confused as the producer.
Are you accusing me of having a sidekick?
Okay, let's go. Today's going to be definitely interesting. All right, let us look at our headlines for today. It's on all our social media platforms. You can send us a message on our YouTube platform, which we're streaming live. And so go on to YouTube, Smooth 981 FM Lagos, and watch and send messages. You can also send message to our WhatsApp message. Your message to our WhatsApp platform 0809 444 0981, and on Twitter at Smooth 981 FM. Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981. Mr. C is at Mr. C on Twitter, and Cheta is at Checkster on Twitter. All right, let's move on to our first story, Mr. C. Air Force Air Force planes in good health, says the Nigerian Air Force. Now, this response obviously is with regards to criticisms that have come forward since the unfortunate crash that happened over the weekend. And 3 aircraft belonging to the Nigerian Air Force were involved in fatal crashes in Abuja, Borno, and the latest one that claimed the life of the Army General, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Buratai. Oh, okay, so this report is wrong. Please, Buratai is not dead. It's Ibrahim Atahir.
Ibrahim Atahir.
Yeah, this day report put Buratai there. All right. A total of 21 personnel of the Air Force and Army were killed in the 3 crashes that occurred in 2021. It's Of course, they've come out to say they're good, it's in good working conditions. However, in this report, there's a security detail who's spoken anonymously to this day and said, actually, they're not. They're obsolete for many of them, and we need to fix that sector. Please take us through the story, Mr. C.
Okay, so thank you. Nigerian Air Force marked its 57th anniversary over the weekend, which is particularly shocking because lives again were just lost on Friday. I would have expected that, or it would have been expected that conventional wisdom would have dictated that the celebration should have been muted or postponed. Well, the story says it was as part of the activities to mark the 57th.
Maybe it's just
They have slated activities, but they did it.
Anyway, so
they are not their presidents.
anyways,
And the president declared the holiday for the army
After
today.
the fact.
anyway, so where I'm going is this, right?
Yeah.
Now they quickly jumped out to suggest or indicate that all the aircraft are good.
Yeah.
Now there was an report of that. There was a crash in March. That report is not out. Now there was a crash on Friday. Clearly, obviously, the report cannot be out.
Yes.
Now, if any commercial airline had 3 plane crashes in the space of 3 months,
One of the
Do you-
planes on their phone.
Cheta,
would you need anyone to tell you that the operating license, air operating certificate of that airline would be withdrawn,
Of course.
or at the very least suspended?
yes.
Now, this statement that their planes are in good health is negated by the fact of the crashes.
Mhm.
Now, they insist that the planes were bought brand new in 2015. Now, we don't know why the planes crashed. But even going that these aircraft are not exactly new. And then the Alpha Jet, for example, production stopped somewhere in the 80s. So where they're getting the spares from for a platform that is no longer in production, only the good Lord knows. Now, we must be very frank. To get the most modern platforms requires a lot of money. Nigeria simply does not have the money now.
Well, okay, now we don't have the money, but what's happened to the military budget over the years?
So that is a very good question, because monies were allocated,
Yeah.
monies were voted, monies were released, and a quick check of monies released and what actually came in, there's some discrepancy or conflict, and it hasn't been resolved.
Yeah.
And that is why we're unable to win the war. It's one of the reasons why we cannot win the war on terror and insurgency, because they don't even have the right ammunition, the right equipment to tackle that war. Cheta wants to chip in and let's give him the
Right,
opportunity.
To be fair to them, especially the recently departed Air Force Chief of Staff, they actually did a good job in terms of
On the
acquisitions. No, the recently departed Air Force Chief of Staff, the one that was swept alongside Sadiq, that was swept along with Buratai. They also did a good job in terms of platform development and engineering within the ranks. Then recently, one of the things that these new military heads of service under Leo Irabo and the rest of them did was that because it was something that they had complained about in prosecuting Boko Haram. The army was doing its own thing, the Air Force was doing its own thing, the Navy was doing its own thing, because you have naval battalions along the Lake Chad.
Yeah.
So they've decided on a tri-service arrangement, which is why for the first time you had the military, the army chief of staff on an Air Force. Air Force. So yes, there is something wrong, and I'm not going to spare any criticism. Our military has this culture of denial. So, but to say that the equipment are old and all of that is not the.
Okay, from this report,
Yes, I know.
From this report, let me just quote for the expert. So, according to this report, a security analyst who had retired on the equivalent rank of Major General raised the alarm over the obsoleteness of the military arsenal. So, where are we? Who is telling the truth? Who is lying?
Again, AVM Sadiq actually spent a lot of time repairing and upgrading. Probably it's not complete, probably it's something, but it's what I'm saying is that it's a bit simplistic to just say, oh, it's because it's obsolete. An aircraft has a lifespan of at least 30 years. So it's not, I mean, your aircraft is not your Kia Cerato that you would just.
Well, this is why we emphasize the importance of a report. So we haven't seen the report of the last crash.
Because of this culture of closed-mouthedness. We don't see any report. So what that does is that it leaves room for all sorts of people to fill in the vacuum.
Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you. Thanks for raising that, Mr. C. We need to ask for reports. We need to demand for one, and I hope this will throw more light. These are 3 crashes too many, and we don't want another one before we start, having these conversations again. Thank you. Let's move on to our next story, Cheta, and this is another important story. Earlier today, when we were discussing this, we talked about how it is a critical issue, yet it doesn't get enough attention as it ought to, and that's from the IDPs. The headline reads from this day, 56,000 IDPs, that's internally displaced persons in Bauchi, appeal for government assistance. According to this report, the chairman of IDPs, Musa Shehu, said they have made several entreaties to the National Emergency Management Agency, and the last time they got help from them was in 2017.
Nothing surprising there. I mean, for someone who follows these things, nothing surprising. Before I go into that, a few numbers. In 2020, there were a total of 40.5 million new internal displacements recorded all over the world. I think it's important for people to understand that there's a difference between borders. A refugee is somebody who has crossed his borders. Nigeria, at the minimum, has more than 100,000 refugees scattered around Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. But the numbers that are truly shocking are the IDP numbers. We are the 7th largest country in terms of IDPs in the world. We have 2.87 million internally displaced people in the country. More IDPs in Nigeria than you have in peaceful places like Sudan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Iraq. We have more IDPs than Iraq. I mean, that tells you a lot about what is happening within the country. Now, having said that, this Bauchi story is tragic for one reason. I personally raised this issue with some officials years ago when we did a report. My organization, SBM Intelligence, did a report in which we went to IDP camps in Borno and Adamawa, and we're like, I visited some of them, and we're like, no human being will live in this camp. And it wasn't surprising to me when 3 months after our report was published, and after we were told essentially that we were we should get lost. 3 months after our report was published, the UK Guardian published a report in which they said that IDPs were leaving, sneaking out of Nigerian camps to go back to their villages which were under Boko Haram control.
So
they'd rather live under Boko Haram than live in a Nigerian IDP camp.
That is a huge indictment on the Nigerian government.
These things that I'm talking about were in 2017. The same time that this chap is saying that they've not received anything. So imagine what has been built up over the years.
Yeah.
When you refuse to take care of people like this, what somebody's chopping the money that is allocated, if the money is indeed allocated, I think we must always add that caveat.
Yes.
At least it's allocated on paper, but if it gets to them, then somebody's probably chopping it in. You create support and sympathy for Boko Haram. End of story. I mean, night follows day. These things, I say 1 + 1 is always equal to 2.
Right. So now, what is the kind of response that what is the kind of response that we're expecting from NEMA? And then I know that a number of goodwill Nigerians, private organizations also give to IDPs. That's another thing I'd like to ask. Should we be doing more in terms of private intervention? And then third part of that, the question I'd like to ask is ideally, IDP or internally displaced society help them rebuild their lives. It's not supposed to be a permanent thing, but in Nigeria, it looks like we haven't seen
everything
much
in
of
this
that
country
happening.
becomes permanent. Don't worry about that.
No, we can't say that. We have to look for ways because that's
let us start with one low hanging fruit.
Okay.
Quota system in terms of the educational disadvantage state quota system thing. I'm sorry I'm segueing, but it's just I'm using that as an example. Was instead in 1973. And it was supposed to run for a period of 10 years to allow educational disadvantaged states to catch up. None of us, and there are 6 of us in this studio right now, none of us was born in 1973. The oldest person among us is over 40, just for you to see how far back this thing has been. We do things that sound good on paper and are supposed to be temporary measures, and then somebody become permanent. Now, to answer your questions, first question, what is NEMA meant to do? NEMA is meant to be a coordinating agency for all of them. Each state has its own equivalent of NEMA. So, for example, Lagos has a Lagos State Emergency Management Authority. It is at those local levels that this thing is supposed to happen. We're not even calling those ones out, right? I think I fall into that. I fall into that trap a lot. Most Nigerians, we have been socialized. We've been socialized into looking at Abuja too much. Yes. It's part of the need for the whole restructuring thing. Yeah. We've been socializing with Abuja. Yes.
Thank you.
It's not accurate. Anyway.
The second question is private interventions. So
private interventions, it's difficult to push private interventions with 23% food employment. I mean, so I have coordinated 2 private interventions over the last 2 years through this fantasy Premier League. The first one, which the money that was contributed was given to Global Rights, which helps IDPs. There was a lot of donations. Were less. And I couldn't stress anybody for a simple reason that I know that the money that is in everybody's pocket is losing value. So right now, I'm thinking, do we even bother to do a third one? Because the money that will come out will probably be less. But we do have a problem. Yeah. It will be nice to be our brother's keeper. Yes. However, in trying to be our brother's keeper, we must also understand that last Thursday, I was dragged to PTA meeting in my children's school. And one of the first things we were talking about was how to increase school fees. I think it was one of those things, violence against teachers, because I felt like slapping the teacher. But like I said, I felt like I didn't say I did. Okay, thank you. But wait, I'm being squeezed. And you're still telling me you want to add to the squeeze? It's just all of us are going through this thing. Yeah. So the natural reaction would be, another donation. Yeah.
But we cannot lose our sense of humanity. I do totally, very good points you've illustrated, Cheta. Thank you very much. But I just want to encourage people who have been giving, please don't stop. Unfortunately, this is the situation we find ourselves, and we must work with the government to ensure that these people get attention.
But remember that the government once upon a time packaged beats that were donated for IDPs.
Yeah,
Just remember
there's
that.
that as well. But I'm trying to make a case here. Don't remind us of the negative aspects. Thank you.
We have to look at it holistically.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. C, let's go on to our next story, please. Reps to bar NPA, NCs from further spending and diverting the revenue they generate, especially the Nigerian Ports Authority, the Nigerian Communications Commission, and the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. So the big money makers. Please take us to this story. Yeah.
So this is the continuing fallout from the National Assembly probe into ministries, departments, and agencies. If you recall, sometime last week in the National Assembly, I think in the House of Reps, they raised the alarm that over 60 NDAs had not remitted revenue into the Treasury single account. And it appears that the Nigerian Ports Authority, the Nigerian Communications Commission, and the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency are part of the 60 agencies that have not been remitting money into the Treasury single account. And the House of Reps has decided to amend the respective acts establishing these agencies to ensure that, in line with the provisions that regulate their daily operations, they are now compelled to transfer money into the Federation account. Now, let us put this in context. The problem in Nigeria has never really been the absence of laws. It is the enforcement, and there is a prevailing and very strong culture of impunity. So yes, the National Assembly will amend the acts establishing these agencies, but it speaks to the absence of strong institutions. And until we enthrone strong institutions in the land, when you have a dominant personality heading any of these agencies, he will act in breach of these provisions, knowing that the system is designed in such a way to ensure that he never gets his day in court. So we need to establish strong institutions. This is a good step from the House of Reps. But beyond this, there needs to be repercussions. We need to start dealing with this culture of impunity and ensuring that people are made to face and deal with the consequences of their actions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. C. On Twitter, Auntie Hello has said I must read their comments. So it says they're calling out this day for their mistake on inputting Quota in place of Atahiru, then saying that the Nigerian Air Force is lying about the planes. 3 crashes in 4 months. Well, you tagged the people involved. I don't know why you wanted me to read it out. But let's go on to the next story. Cheta. Southwest APC leaders back Southern governors on open grazing, restructuring others. This is a very good report with regards to, and it's interesting as well, with regards to a meeting held by some top APC national leaders, well, some leaders, including the APC national leader, Shiwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Chief Bisi Akande, who came out to report on, the agreement or the resolutions from the meeting. And they've said that they're in support of the open grazing. Bear in mind that
they're in support of the ban on open
grazing. Of the ban on open grazing. Bear in mind that this is not the stance of APC.
What this shows is that APC is fracturing into its component parts. Is what is, I mean.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying.
APC was a special purpose vehicle that came together just to take power from Jonathan's PDP. It never became a party. So now you can see clearly that as 2023 is approaching. So we are seeing the CPC part is diametrically opposed to this whole open grazing ban, and the CPC part is largely restricted to the north. The ACM part is for it because there are people demand it, and they know that if they come out against their people, they lose legitimacy and probably the elections. And one thing that you have to give the Southwest is that more than any other part in Nigeria, the Southwest is the most sophisticated politically. So it is the most likely part of the country where if the politicians refuse to go according to the will of the people, then they are most likely to lose the elections. This doesn't apply in the Southeast, doesn't apply in the South, doesn't apply in the North. As in those other regions, except the Middle Belt again, in the middle belt, once the people decide this is how it's going to be, then the politicians mainly have no choice but to follow. What you see in the southeast is a huge disconnect between the people and the politicians, and the people don't even bother to turn up for elections anyway. Then in the north, the politicians simply dictate this is how I want it to be. So these little dynamics are showing up in this paper. Now, what is happening in the south generally and in the middle belt, especially the eastern part of the middle belt, is there's an overwhelming demand for open grazing to be banned. The politicians have no choice, which is why for the first time in, I think, almost 19 years since Bola Tinubu, when he was forgetting his name. He's
No, don't say that, Cheta. But go.
He is. Anyway, they didn't turn up. So, but all the others, I think the key thing is that neither Ayade or the Oshun fellow.
We have Oshun citizens listening, Cheta. Please go ahead.
Governor
I keep
Etola.
forgetting his name.
Okay, I'll remind you. Etola, say it. It's not hard.
Where was I? They both their names were put on the communique. Neither of them has distanced themselves from it. So that says that they support it. So basically, the seven, and it's because they know that people demand. It's like a red line. Now, the key thing was the reaction from the north. I mean, for the first time, you saw, with the exception of Ganduje, who has, and Ganduje is not CPC, he's probably NPDP, if that's another faction within APC. All the others have been like, why? So there's a diametric difference that needs to be bridged. Basically, Nigeria, we need to sit down and talk.
Yes, we do.
That's the long and short of everything.
All right, thank you very much. And something else, and I will just move on quickly, but I noticed is that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbagabia-Mila, was at this meeting. And what we've called for is legislation. Beyond talking about it, we've asked that it's put into legislation. And if we don't just want support coming out to say things, we want it to be part of the law at state level and hopefully at federal level as well. But let's move on to the next story. Talking about legislation, CC. Lagos motorists driving against traffic risk imprisonment, vehicle forfeiture. We're back here again in the Punch newspaper. The Lagos State Environmental and Special Offences Unit Task Force has announced that motorists caught driving against the traffic will now face up to a year in prison. I hope you're listening. If convicted, and the vehicles will be forfeited to the government. So, if what can stop this thing? We talk about psychiatric tests from previous administration. So, what can really sort this problem out? Or sort this problem?
So, we're here again. Previously, the punishment was for driving against traffic. Was you have your vehicle impounded. The drivers who drive mad in Lagos.
Okay, that's how to put it.
Now, Lagos State government is now suggesting, or has now indicated that if you're caught driving against traffic, you could be liable to spend up to a year in prison.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, I must add a note of caution. On some streets in Lagos, some roads in Lagos that have now become one way, that were previously going in both directions, there are no signs.
Thank you.
And if you're not aware of it, you have hungry, devilish agents of the state who are looking to extort innocent citizens. That is for the innocent citizens, right?
Yeah.
Now,
they wait for you. They
now,
just miss it.
Now, but we have criminally minded drivers. Now, if you live around the Chevron axis in the morning when traffic is building up, say between 6:30, from 6:30 a.m. onwards, you see a lot of cars on the Chevron side going towards VI, the VI bound lane. Then you see some magicians on the other lane, their headlights are on and they're speeding. They don't care because they're like, they can do what they want, and it still speaks to the culture of impunity. Now, why will people drive against traffic in Lagos? Why is it so bad? Because, truth be told, the road network here is quite limited. Why don't they have this problem in Abuja? Abuja, the road network is extensive.
They have it in Abuja.
I was actually trying to think about that. I think it's just
it's not as bad.
It's not as bad. It's not as bad as
So this is a
Lagos-
contributory factor.
It's a contributory
Yes,
factor.
makes
So
it
we
more
don't
worse.
have the proper road network. But beyond that, Nigerians, if given a millimeter, will run mad for 5 miles. And that nonsense. So even this 1 year prison term will not deter some people.
Do you know that's what I was going to ask? Is this enough?
No, because you know
The
why?
problem, from my point of view, my humble point of view, every time I've seen traffic in these Lagos, unnecessary traffic, it is always a Danfo that causes it. And the problem is that last month we look at Danfo doing the wrong thing and we'll say nothing. Then the moment you try and follow the Danfo, they will catch you.
Why
But
would
you
you
see,
follow the downfall?
because when you see, I don't. One of the reasons why my car is in pristine condition is that I keep all the rules. But nevertheless, I watch it so often. You are sitting there many times. I feel foolish sitting there trying to do the right thing when seeing all those people. Now the problem is that when one Danfo does the wrong thing, and then other people try, it quickly overwhelms the last mile guys. Because suddenly one Danfo has done it, the last one people have looked away. One human being does it, and then the last one people try to catch him, and then 6 other human beings do. And then suddenly they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
All right.
But
Okay.
the Nigerian thing generally, we are rational beings. The problem, as he said in an earlier topic, is Nigeria is chock full of laws, no enforcement.
Yeah.
And once the law becomes a suggestion, people will do what it suggests.
Words are
Or
marble.
the
The
opposite.
law has become a suggestion. Mr. C, we're going to complete
So,
you.
so I was going to.
I don't know, Vex.
No, that's fine. So I was going to conclude by saying that beyond the prison term, right?
Yes.
We must identify, if the Lagos State government can identify the culprits, it should go beyond losing the car and going to prison.
So stiffer penalties.
Stiffer penalties, yes. So if the prison is you can come out, what they should do is you will spend an indefinite term in a psychiatric home subject to review
Where's
every
the
2
space?
years.
Where's
No,
the
they'll
Thank
create space.
you.
They will
create with space.
They will
with space.
create, no, this thing,
During the last Navalny protest in Russia,
Okay.
the Russian authorities arrested on the spot 50,000 people and processed all of them that day. Do we have the capacity to arrest and process 10,000 people
We're
on the
talking about
spot in this country?
last month officials even being
No, forget.
overwhelmed. We say they're overwhelmed. Where how can the court has said this on strike?
you asked for what to do.
Yes, well,
If
thank
this
you.
is if
And
this
then you
is,
now even suggested a more draconian thing. Start catching Danfo people and you will see everybody will behave. At least start with that one.
Okay. All right. Let me take some comments from. I think this is something we need to have a full show on to give solutions or to profess solutions to the traffic issues in Lagos State in Nigeria. Yinka says, "How sure are you that even the last mile guys and Danfo drivers, bus drivers, are not doing shift duties? Like when the guy is not driving, Danfo is in last mile uniform. He said that they're more mad. I don't know. Even the comments.
I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised.
All right, we have just a little time to get through the last story for today, Cheta, and I'd like you to combine both because it talks about alongside travel and immigration. Americans, Europeans apply for Nigerian citizenship, says official, Lagos State official. That's the Commissioner for Home Affairs, and not few. She proudly states that there are 74 applications for naturalization so foreigners wanting to become Nigerians, and then very importantly, Nigeria declaring 90 travelers as health hazards. So what's happened is that if you're coming from some particular countries, of course India being one of them, you're supposed to be to be quarantined for 7 days, and it's supposed to be a particular facility. And these people have been called to jump bail, so they're wanted. Unfortunately, their names are not in this article, but I believe they released their names and said that these people are a health hazard. Cheta, please your take on this, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, they should publish the list of the people that are health hazard and they are supposed to address so that we can run from them when we see them.
Yeah.
Public shaming is always a good move to get. So on this one, I'm fully in support of the government. As per the 74 people that applied for Nigerian citizenship, when you are coming to a dysfunctional country to make money,
Cheta, stop saying we're not dysfunctional. When you're coming to Nigeria.
did you wake up with lights this morning? Anyway, as I was saying, 12,600 Nigerians applied to Canada alone last year for permanent residence. So the numbers are disproportionately weighted in favor of the Western countries. So I completely understand that they will want to celebrate 74 Americans, Europeans, and Lebanese coming to the country, and I celebrate with them. But these people are making money at the high end. There used to be a time that we used to do citizenship ceremony where the president will come and welcome 19 people and give them Nigerian passports. At least we stopped that. That I was about to say something that cannot be said on air.
Thank you.
So,
thank you very much. On that note, we wrap up today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. Mr. C, thank you very much. Mr. C is at D, Mr. C on Twitter. Cheta, thank you very much. Cheta is at Checkstar on Twitter. You can follow us at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag Freshly Pressed 981. In a few minutes, we have Tega joining me for today's edition of The Locker Room.
You've won.
Congratulations, Juve, and congratulations, Man City, as they lead for this year's EPL. I'm looking forward to them taking on the championship.
Chelsea will win.
Chelsea will win. Let's talk about that in a few minutes in The Locker Room 981.